Obviously, not everyone's going to become an IGL, but there's a lot you can learn from the role of an IGL that can help you as a fragger, or if you are going to become an IGL, there's a lot you can learn to become a better one. There's a lot of mechanics that aren't as commonly known, like a lot of people think IGLing is just the guy who calls the shots, which, yeah, generally you're going to rely on your IGL to make the decisions, but there's a lot more to it than that. In this video, we're going to go over the basics of drop maps, zone priority, loot routes, and why it's all important, especially when you start making those good points in a high elo tournament. Now, if you are a fragger and you're wondering why would I need to know any of this, well, why'd you click the video? I mean, this actually might be the role for you. You might be surprised. And even if you don't take on the role of an IGL, I mean, look at players like Clicks, who did switch to IGL, learned a lot, and has become a better player for it, even though he's fragging again. I mean, a lot of the best solo players have great IGL skills. To make this video simple, I'm going to section this off into 3 main parts. You can also skip to the chapters or any of these time codes on the screen to find exactly what you're looking for. The 3 main parts are going to be off-spawn, mid-game, and endgame. Now this first section actually starts before you queue up for your tournament. And hopefully weeks before, but at least a couple days. To start, you're going to want a drop map. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's basically a series of markers placed around your drop spot, like this. They're going to give you the best drop to always land right where you want to, the fastest possible. Now, making a drop map is a bit tedious. You will have to take time on it, or, I mean, if you want, you can pay for a dropping calculator or someone else to make it, but the best way to do it is to make it yourself and make sure you get it like pixel perfect and always beat the team conning you. To use your drop map, you're going to pick the best marker for what your bus is, and then your goal is to deploy right over it. Now if you're gliding in and you're a little high, then you want to pull your marker back just a little bit. If you're landing a little bit low, you should push it forward a bit. Now you can do something like this where you color code them. And the way I color code mine is green is a solid one that I've tested and used. Yellow is something that I'm sure works, and I've tested it a little bit, but it's not 100%. And red are ones I need to work on. Now once you land, you need to have a plan. Especially if you're unconned, you should have a solid loot route that will help you loot your POI as fast as possible, so that when you run into another team, whether you're going after them, getting keyed, or anything else, you are ready for it. Or if you are near a tower, for example, so you can be up there first and ready to set up. Another thing I like to do is plan where the most likely spots people coming over or rotating in can be. Now with this season having towers back, one thing I liked to do was I planned how we're going to box up the tower, and I've been marking everywhere the bots can spawn around it. Now actually, courtesy of Cease, in his Cease's Thesis Discord, and also some of his content on Cease's Extra, in this server he had a whole section about Ritzy Riviera and how he does his nodes. And I totally stole his pad distances, because those are all relevant to my drop spot. Another thing you can do is plan your rotates. So when you have max poles, how are you going to get to them, or congested side, whatever you're looking for depending on your game, and how you're going to be there when you need to be there. I also encourage you, as you practice with your duo, the more time you make notes for yourselves and also for each other, things you can work on both as a duo and individually. And then make a point to practice and work on those things. Again, individually and together as a duo. I'm not going to give you all the details on my spot and the exact way I do it because, well, it's my drop, and because it's my drop. But if you want to get super in-depth with that stuff, again, I highly encourage you to check out Cease's Extra channel or the Cease's Thesis Discord. Your mid-game is a lot more mixed. It really depends on how you want to play. I mean, if you want to go for a safe key game, you can run the edge of the map where you're going to run into duos and not get third-partied as much. If you're trying to just drop a high number of kills, you can try and stay toward the middle of the map where you're going to run into a lot of players. And if you're looking for a safe game, you'll go right back to dead side and just rotate around and avoid other teams. You should always, in a mid-game fight, know how you're going to fight together. If you're getting pushed or take a lot of damage, it's good to have a word like reset, where you're both going to get together and make a few boxes. I like having 4 boxes, 6 boxes. 2 is a good starting point, but it's nice to have a little room that you can expand from. You also should know how to play support. If your teammate's healing, you need to be ready to hold walls, hold ceilings and tiles, expand the box, and give them the space they need and time they need. Now, we're playing together, and knowing what you're doing and having a strategy is the most useful is in Endgame, where nearly every second counts. Now, if you're lucky enough to have zone reveal, you don't always need to prioritize being right in the perfect spot for the next zone, but it's good to be aware of what the next zone is and plan how you can get to what part of circle and how you can play off of what the zone is, and constantly be checking it. Also, anytime you go to rotate, make sure you're scouting out your cone. Don't just blind rotate, have no clue where you're going. Don't communicate to your teammate and find yourself or your teammate solo. Make sure you know where you're going, tell your teammate what your plan is, and then execute it together. Now, if you don't have zone reveal, this is going to be a little bit harder, but you can still plan ahead of time. Like, if the zone pulls this way, how are we going to get over there? If the zone pulls that way, how are we going to get over there? I usually like to think if it goes left, right, or full pull, and have an idea of how I'm going to go to each one of those. Now, I would make sure you have an idea of how dead side and zone priority works, especially towards like the end game, and I highly recommend this video by resub. Another quick tip you can do is keep an eye on the medallions on your map. If you see one or two of them always getting the next zone, they might have zone reveal. Oftentimes a medallion player is one to more likely push for a tower. Especially if you look at this medallion here, it is right next to a 100% spawn tower. Now, rotating in general, a lot of it just comes from experience and getting a feel for your game. I mean, the more you play, the more you'll get a feel for how to do it and when to rotate. But a good rule of thumb is to rotate early, but not first. And when you get into the actual moving zones, try and pick a side of zone. Staying on the edge of the zone means no one from in storm is going to be looking at you, and you primarily just have to focus on above, below, and to one side of you. Also, if you feel like where you are is getting super congested, it's better to stay toward the front, where there's going to be less players, or if you can't help it, try and switch layers. Going up and down can give you more opportunity, and sometimes find you a free layer that you can run right across without having to use a grappler and get, separated from your duo or launched somewhere you don't want to be. If you get stuck or land all the way low ground, the best plan of action is always stay front. You get plenty of opportunities to get up in front of other teams and cut them off, rather than getting cut off yourself. If you're using grapplers especially, stay off low ground. You want to be elevated where you can't get buried and have your grappling ability completely blocked, forcing you to run the zone anyway. In these last zones, sometimes your mistakes can be heavily punished. To reduce this, really focus on playing with your duo. As an IGL, your job is to make sure you know where you're going, and it's a little more on the fragger's job to stay with you. But also it is on you if you do make a rotation or make a play without telling them what's going on. They don't know what's happening and they can't play off of you. Also, be willing to share the role. If you're needing to pop a med kit or big pot or whatever, tell them to tarp. Say it's on you, I'll follow you. Hand them the responsibility. If you want more in-depth videos on any parts of the game and just generally how to play them outside of focusing on one role or some general stuff I covered in here, let me know. I'll make more videos focused on those things, and while I'm no pro or professional coach, I'll do it for free.